What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through the midfielder review as part of our positional review week. Now once again, I do apologize for dropping that best draft video yesterday instead of the midfielder review, but don't worry, we're going to be covering it in today's video. So if you guys are new to the series, don't worry, I've done the goalkeepers and the defenders before this, so ensure that you guys check those videos out if you guys haven't. But basically what I'll be doing is I'll be going over the midfielders at the different price points and selecting who I think is the best value options and who has the best points potential. So this is going to be an exciting one. The midfielders used to be the most important position, now it might be the forwards, but that midfield department just packs so much value that you can get. So big debates about should you go for Cole Palmer, Saka, Salah, even Heung-min Son. Let's see if we can kind of get more clarity throughout the stats. So if that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the first graph we're going to be going over is going to be in terms of the minutes per games played. Now this is kind of total games played, not exactly starts, so just keep that in mind when you do go over the numbers. So I just want to apologize, there's going to be a lot of labels that you guys see on screen right now, and that's because there's a ton of midfielders, so try and watch this on as big a screen as possible if you can. So let's bring up those mins per game and games played stats, and this will be for midfielders from the 5.5 million mark all the way up to the 12.5 Mo Salahs. So as you guys can see, you probably weren't prepared for how many players are going to pop up on your screen, and it does become a little bit of a mess if you look too deeply. Basically what you guys have to do here is you have to look at the top right hand side. These are players that are absolutely nailed. Think of your Declan Rices. So Declan Rice has played the maximum 38 games or appearances, and he's played about 90 minutes or about 85 in every game, which therefore makes him pretty nailed. Now the players that you want to focus on don't necessarily have to have played the most minutes, just as long as they're getting the majority of them, as that does increase their chance of attacking returns. Now there have been a few players that unfortunately have faced injury. For example, Matoma played around 18-19 games, but when he has featured, basically 80 mins per appearance. I do believe though in that top right hand side there's enough kind of midfielder options to look at. The one that for me is quite surprising is Phil Foden. He's played about 35 games with plus 80 minutes in each of them. So I've said this over the prior seasons, any time Phil Foden gets the majority of minutes, he's going to be an absolute steal, as his stats per 90 minutes are simply outstanding. What then happened? Phil Foden got a ton of minutes and a ton of FPL points, so I'll be looking at preseason and making sure that he's back for game week 1 or at least game week 2. But otherwise Son, Saka very closely there, Jared Bowen, Bruno Fernandes, and Cole Palmer just below the 80-minute mark, but just remember, he didn't start the season. So for example, in his case, he's probably played the majority of minutes in the games that he started, but towards the beginning of the season he was subbed on, and therefore that's going to take his mins per game down. So context is always important. My favorite 5.5 at the moment, Andreas, I might actually change him though. He's played about every single game but has had some sub appearances, which has nailed his mins per game down. A very popular option, Mo Salah there, you can see that he had some kind of injury concerns or some benchings. He's played around 32 games but about 80 minutes per game, which is perfectly fine to be honest. Eze, another selection that unfortunately had some injuries last season. He was integrated pretty quickly though back into the starting 11, and therefore still has respectable numbers. Now the one player that you might be a little bit worried about is going to be Bailey. You can find him on the 35 appearances but below the 60-minute mark, and that just shows that he was susceptible to the occasional benching and sub on. His colleague Dayvy was probably the player that he was featuring for on those sub appearances, and with him departing the club, hopefully Bailey becomes more nailed. Hudson-Odoi, another player that was subbed on quite a bit, but should be more nailed as far as to kind of set that starting 11 for this season, and therefore some of these players have massive potential if they do become more nailed. But I'm going to move on right now because this graph you guys should probably have in your memory already. Please try and target more kind of nailed options. As mentioned, the more minutes, the more chance for attacking returns. But as mentioned, some of these players with less minutes have the potential if they do start playing more. Now the next graph we're going to get into is going to be the part of the attacking stats, and this is going to be XG involvement per 90 minutes. Now very important, XG involvement does include XG as well as XA, and this is the penalty variant of the stat. So bringing up the numbers on screen, you can see that Cole Palmer has a very high XG involvement, but he took a ton of pens last season, but this is per 90 minutes. Now Kevin De Bruyne, always one of the most sensational players. When he does play, he gets your FPL points, but unfortunately with his older age now, those minutes are probably going to be quite reduced. But you guys can see why these players are priced more expensive: Cole Palmer, Saka, Son, all putting up really respectable numbers. And on the cheaper bracket, we have those punts like a Jota or Werner. Also, shout out to Bruno. You guys just know his XA stat was simply outstanding, and he's definitely United's main talisman. Now you might be thinking I'm ignoring him, but no, Mo Salah at the top right hand side. There's so much clearance between him and Kevin De Bruyne. Almost 1.2 goals involved each game is simply outstanding. Now if you guys can't see the player that you currently have in your team, just remember I've included a filter here. It's every player that scored more than 0.4 XGI per 90 minutes. For example, Andreas just misses out on I think about 0.38. So we are looking at the cream of the crop in terms of the attacking numbers, but your cheaper, more consistent options might be missing out here. So the two players I like the look of is going to be Eze and Gordon. They come in at a more expensive price tag but pretty consistent options. And right now I'm 50-50 on who to actually choose. Another cheaper option that I have my eye on is going to be Bailey at 6.5 million. Those stats look actually pretty good. He's almost in the territory of those more expensive assets. If you guys watched my video yesterday, you'll know that Jared Bowen had a great Premier League season. Once those West Ham fixtures do improve, I've got my eye on him quite a bit. He's also absolutely nailed in that West Ham lineup. Now paying a bit more attention to that more expensive bracket, you guys can see why Cole Palmer is slightly more expensive than a Saka and a Son, and Foden unfortunately has a bit of a drop off at 9.5 million. I've seen some people with an Odegaard in their team, but I would probably suggest looking at someone like a Bruno Fernandes. And if Jota does become nailed in that Liverpool lineup, he could be an absolute steal at his cheaper price point. But just on kind of general reflection, you guys can see why Mo Salah is so much more expensive than these other assets. But just remember, this is expected, not actuals. Now the next graph, or the next stat we're going to go over, is actually pretty similar in terms of value to the XG involvement. But now let's go over expected FPL points per 90 minutes. So I got this stat from Fantasy Football Fix. What they do is they basically take every goal scoring or point scoring opportunity in terms of their expected numbers. Now this will also include the clean sheet point if that midfielder should have got it. It's a very nice summation of their expected points. So a similar trend here, Mo Salah on the far right hand side. Once again we have the filter at 4.5 points per game, which is actually pretty high for kind of cheaper midfielders. So Salah at nearly 8.5 expected points per 90 minutes, which just shows you that Campsy threat that he does possess. Cole Palmer not too shabby though at around 7.5, this does include penalties though. Saka shows why he's a better option than Heung-min Son, and I can probably back that as well, and then Phil Foden comes in at the cheaper price point of 9.5 million. Once again, shout out to Bruno over someone like an Odegaard, especially the amount of clean sheet points that Odegaard would have had last season. All I can remember though with Bruno was the amount of kind of big chances he was creating, and the United forwards couldn't kind of convert them. Hopefully it's not the same this season. Then our two favorite punt options, Diego Jota as well as Trossard. This kind of happens with most kind of Arsenal second string attackers and defenders. When they did play, their points potential was massive, but because they had limited game time, their stats are quite inflated. Once again, shout out to Eze, Gordon and Bailey. They're putting on really respectable numbers here and should probably be top of your list if you guys are looking at a more budget midfielder, with Jared Bowen further down the list. Elliott, another 5.5 that's been mentioned quite a bit. When he did feature, he got FPL points, and under slot, could he have a more kind of regular position? But this graph kind of tells you what you had in the previous XG involvement, just the nice stat that I've picked up over from Fix. Now the last graph I want to show you is going to be a combination of those two stats. There should be kind of a very positive relationship. The higher the XG involvement, the higher the expected FPL points, and that's what we're seeing here. What you guys can see with Saka and Son, even though they had the same amount of XG involvement, either the chances were more clinical or those clean sheet points are coming in clutch, as they have a far higher expected FPL points per minute. This graph though does have a very kind of high threshold to get into, so your cheaper options probably won't be here. Once again, Mo Salah is showing his dominance as the most expensive midfielder, with Cole Palmer following closely in second. Now this graph has just made me go a little bit cold on an option like a Son or a Foden. If I could afford them, I might as well go for someone like a Saka or try find the funds for a Cole Palmer, as the cheaper options like an Eze are actually quite competitive. Once again, Leon Bailey 6.5 million, this might actually change my formation, drop Ollie Watkins, get Leon Bailey, and just hope that he plays more minutes. Once again, a Bruno showing is a pretty consistent option. Even when United don't have the best attack, he still gets FPL points. Very nice creative gem in that midfield. But this is a combination as mentioned of expected FPL points and XG involvement, both stats per 90 minutes. Now an extra bonus stat, which is also going to get pretty kind of complex, is going to be XG versus XA. The reason I want to show you this graph is it just kind of compares who's more of a creative midfielder to more of a goal-scoring midfielder. And you've got two extreme examples here. The first one, Mo Salah, obviously does have some XA threat, but XG is off the chart compared to a Kevin De Bruyne who literally likes to assist. It's a very kind of big difference between them and the rest of the squad. Cole Palmer though showing his goal threat ability. Saka also showing his increased kind of attacking threat, which is quite a surprise because I would think that Son would be that man. And this is where an old favourite in Mbumo shows his kind of ability. Gordon Eze pretty kind of similar on the range, whereas Leon Bailey is more of an assister, same with Bruno Fernandes. Looking at this graph though, even though it is XG versus XA, you guys would prefer to go for kind of a goal scoring midfielder than an assister, as you score more points for a goal versus an assist. But if you guys do look a little bit closer, it does get very messy. I do apologize for that. You guys can pause the screen right now if you want to and kind of get your best selection, but I'm going to go to the previous numbers. So as a conclusion to the midfielder review video, I'll be going over the following graph as it gives us more insight into the attacking ability of these midfielders. I think the first conclusion is that Mo Salah is definitely worth it in terms of the increased price tag. The fact that his expected FPL points are so much higher than the other options just make him the standout Campsy option. The next player, Cole Palmer, is great value for money even at 10.5 million, but I do worry about the kind of consistency of the penalties this season. Even though Saka was on penalties as well, I think Cole Palmer definitely took more than him. But if Chelsea are quite attacking this season, I can see him making up the numbers he did like last season with those goals and assists. Even though Kevin De Bruyne's stats look pretty good, can't really recommend him unless his fitness is top shape, which unfortunately I don't think it's going to be. Trossard might be a cheeky punt in terms of a more cheaper kind of Arsenal midfielder, but I'm pretty sure Saka's going to be your go-to man for the Gunners. Going to keep my eyes on a Diego Jota, because if he does kind of start playing consistently, it probably will be out of position, and then he's just even better value. There's probably a debate to be had between Bruno as well as Odegaard. Currently I'm favouring the United man, and Bailey at the moment's got my attention at 6.5 million. Between Gordon and Eze, even though it's 0.5, if you can only afford Eze, I don't think there's too much in it, but probably go for the player who has better fixtures between these two. Otherwise, Foden and Son, probably a wait and see for me. Just want to see where they set up in that formation. And the 5.5 bracket might be a punt that has good stats and gets more minutes this season. So this is going to be the end of our midfielder review video. I just love the midfielders. So much value can be had and these more premium assets could have massive points potential. Let me know in the comments down below who's your starting midfield at the moment. Also cover any essential picks or kind of underrated picks. And are you going for the ever popular Mo Salah this season? Stay tuned tomorrow for the forwards. We'll be covering Erling Haaland and is he worth it? So hopefully I catch you then. But this is basically a wrap for the video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you have subscribed yet. Forwards coming tomorrow, so make sure those bot notifications are turned on. You guys don't want to miss out on this one. But for the time being, I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers, bye.